Conference on virtual reality. Overview of research work. To study the effectiveness of connection technique of memory model, this is an experimental type of research where there are two variables, dependent and independent. Dependent variable is achievement in English and independent variable includes method of teaching, that is traditional and memory model. Here sample is taken of Agrawal Public School of class 9. This study is an attempt to prepare the students in such a way that whatever they learn can be retained in long-term memory, thus improve their achievement in English with the help of connection technique of memory model. These are certain operational definitions. First is of connection technique, the very effective way of remembering new vocabulary by relating it to the words that are already known and that contain same word stem. Short-term memory, which refers to the active or primary memory in which information is stored for further analysis in verbal form with limited capacity and is forgotten in less than 30 seconds if not rehearsed consistently. Long-term memory is relatively a permanent memory from which even a piece of information stored a long time ago may be recalled without any loss. Memory codes at this stage are generally sensory, verbal or conceptual in nature. It uses semantic or imaginable codes to store information. Models of teaching. Models of teaching help students to acquire information, ideas, skills, value, way of thinking and means of expressing themselves in an appropriate environment for attaining well. There are four families of models of teaching: information processing model, personal model, social interaction family and behavior modification family. Our connection technique is a part of memory model, which in turn is a part of information processing model. Now we see the components of memory model. The first component is syntax, which is further divided into four phases. Second is social system. Third, principle of teaching. Fourth, support system. Fifth is application, and sixth, to see the effects of memory model. Syntax. Syntax includes sequence of activities. First phase of syntax is attending to the material. Phase second is developing connection. Phase third is expanding sensory images, and fourth phase includes practicing recall. Social system. It is a cooperative work that student and teacher become a team who work on a new material together. Third is principle of reaction, which helps the learner to maintain sequence of learning material, maintaining ridiculous association and motivate the learners to revise the learned material. Support system. It is given in the form of books, films and other audiovisual material, which are specially useful for increasing the sensory richness of the association. Application. Memory model is taught in such a way that dependence on teacher is totally decreased. Students become independent and can use the procedure to memorize something. Here the syntax are given in detail. Phase 1 is relating to the attending to the material, in which teacher and learner use techniques of underlining, listening, reflecting the whole material which student needs to memorize. Developing connections. The teacher and learners develop connections using keywords, substitute words and link system techniques. Third is expanding sensory images. The teacher and learner use techniques of ridiculous association and exaggeration. The learners must make the revision of images. Fourth is practicing recall, that is revision. Teacher encourage the learner to make the practice of recalling the learning material of various lessons of a unit. Next are the effects of memory model, which are two in number. First is the instructional effect, which is visible, and second is nurturant effect. Instructional effect are mastery of facts and ideas, system of memorizing and attending faculties, whereas nurturant effects are somewhat abstract in nature, that is the sense of intellectual power and creative attitude and capacities that are developed in a particular student. These are the studies that are being showed by the researcher. Researcher found few studies related to the memory model, achievement in English, short-term memory and long-term memory. These are the researches that have already been done on these variables. With respect to memory model, 10 researches have been found, which is done by Panda, Sushma, Kumar, Deshmukh, Sushila, Rathi, Levin and Joel, Kayarthi, Nivedita, Mastropin and Scruggs. None of the studies have been found with respect to achievement in English subject. With respect to short-term memory, two studies have been found by Dhariwal in 1988 and Gautam in 2004. Long-term memory studies are done by Saleh 2016. Academic achievement is found to be enhanced with the use of memory model, that is Panda, Sushma Kumar, Deshmukh, Sushila Rathi, Levin, Nivedita, Mestropir, and Scruggs found memory model effective in enhancing achievement in different subjects. Dhariwal and Gautam also found that memory model was quite effective in increasing short-term memory, and long-term memory was also increased by the use of memory model that was found by Saleh. Now we come to the rationale of the study. It is evident that there is a dearth in researches on the memory model. Very few researches have been done in India with the variable selected by the researcher. With the use of connection techniques under memory model, an individual can improve his or her vocabulary and enhance communication skills in the form of consistency, clarity, creativity, and content by learning. The objective with which this study have been undertaken by the researcher is to compare the adjusted mean score of achievement in English of the group taught through memory model and group taught through traditional method of teaching by considering pre-achievement in English as covariate. The hypothesis for the same objective is there is no significant difference in the adjusted mean scores of achievement in English of group taught through memory model and group taught through traditional method of teaching by considering pre-achievement in English as. The next was to study the reaction of experimental group to whom the study have been conducted with respect to memory model and their reaction towards memory seen. There were certain delimitations which were seen by the researcher after the research work, that the study was limited only to CBSE English medium school. The data were collected from 9th class students of Indore city only. The sample was from urban area and only selected topics of Beehive and Moment Book of English by CBSE were. Now we go on to the next slide with the tools that were used by the researcher. It has to be made very clear that all the tools that were used by the researcher were standardized. Long-term memory tool BV Asthana, short-term memory tool BV Asthana. Achievement in English and reaction of student was developed by. Sample can be seen in the form of group-wise and gender-wise distribution. Both experimental and traditional group were selected from Agrawal Public School. In experimental group, there were 22 girls and 23 boys of one section, and in traditional group, 23 girls and 22 boys were of. This is the schematic representation of the experiment that was undertaken during the research work by the researcher. First, pre-testing was done within 4 days. Each test was conducted a single day, like administration of achievement test, administration of long-term memory, and administration of short-term memory. Then treatment was given for 71 days. Again, the process of the same test was repeated in the form of post-testing, in which administration of achievement test, administration of long-term memory, and administration of short-term memory was done. These are the assumptions of ANCOVA that were checked for objective. Assumption 1. Sample size is 45 in each group. Thus, it satisfies the sample size criteria. Assumption 2 was also fulfilled as the group were assigned randomly. Third assumption was fulfilled as dependent variable and covariates were on the interval scale. This assumption is also fulfilled as the nature of tool reflects the data scale. Assumption 4. It was tested with the help of Kolmogorov-Smirnov test as the sample size was greater than 50. Assumption 5 was tested with the help of Levin's test using SPSS. Assumption 6 was tested with the help of homogeneity of regression slope. Assumption 7 was tested with the help of linear relationship between covariate and dependent. Here is the objective-wise analysis one-way ANCOVA to compare the adjusted mean scores of achievement in English of group taught through memory model and group taught through traditional method of teaching by considering pre-achievement in English as proceed further with the objective, which was to compare the adjusted mean score of achievement in English of group taught through memory model and group taught through traditional method of teaching by considering pre-achievement in English as covariate. And here the assumption of normality, homogeneity of variance, assumption of homogeneity of regression slope, and assumption of linearity of pre and post scores for each treatment group was seen. Parametric statistics was used by the researcher as sample was 45 in each group, random assignment of the group, and data was on interval scale. Before proceeding further, assumptions of parametric test were: assumption number 1, which is related to the summary of normality for achievement in English of experimental and traditional group. Here the value of P in each case is 0.057, which is greater than 0.05, hence the assumption of Assumption 2, which is summary of homogeneity for achievement in English of student of experimental and traditional group. Again, the value of P is 0.739, which is again greater than 0.05. Hence, the assumption of homogeneity. Assumption number 3 is homogeneity of regression slope. As the graph, in the graph we can see that both the slopes were parallel to each. Say that both the slopes are parallel to each other and have linear relationship. That shows homogeneity of regression slopes assumption. The fourth is linearity of pre and post course for each. Here there is a linear relationship between covariate and dependent variables in both the groups, traditional and experimental. Here is the summary of one-way ANCOVA, where we can see that the significant value is 0.001, which is less than 0.05. So here again the condition is fulfilled, as a result of which the groups were compared with respect to their means, and in mean we found that the experimental scored higher as compared to the control group. The mean scores of experimental group were 38.550 and that of control group was 35.044. This shows that memory model was quite effective in achievement in English, where experimental scored higher as compared to the control. Here is the interpretation. The value of P is 0.001, which is less than 0.05. That indicates that adjusted mean scores of achievement in English of students taught through memory model and traditional method differ significantly when pre-achievement in English was taken as covariate. Mean scores of achievement in English of the students taught through memory model is 38.550, which is higher than that of the control group. Next are the implications that are being given by the researcher for teacher educators, teachers, students. As teacher educators have a profound impact during the process of teaching learning, so not only pre-service teachers but also in-service teachers should be trained to use memory model in the classroom, as it has proved to the more effective in ameliorating memorization of student. Teachers should also use this memory model for enhancing memory when the nature of the subject matters demands. Memorization, as it also helps to develop analytical thinking among the students and makes it possible for the students apply these skills in their day-to-day life. Memory model helps students to use memory expansion method to make their learning simple, easy and also to be learned, and retain information that focus on their intellectual and personality development and further utilize in their higher education and competitive examination and progress ahead in this comment. Administrator, textbook writers and curriculum designers. Administration focus on teaching methods to provide an effective means of education to fulfill the needs of the students, and at present there is a cutthroat competition in the world where student needs to retain a large amount of information so that they can process information for the creativity, critical thinking and problem solving when it is required. With respect to textbook writers, they can also make use of memory model to make their content more fruitful and can help in developing logical thinking, mastery of facts and ideas, creative thinking and attitude, and this will also help students to add real life anecdotes based on the topic. Memory model has wide application in the teaching of various school subjects, as when the students master the principles and techniques of memory model, he or she uses it independently to memorize whole content and all the things related to the. There are certain suggestions that are given by the researcher for future researches. Research can be done with large sample. Different variables like creativity, self-confidence, self-concept, etc. can be undertaken by a future researcher. Nurturing and instructional effects of memory model can be explored. Different populations with different board like CBSE, ICSE, MP board can be undertaken by future researchers. Thank you very much.